Dear Franny Podcast is sponsored by Audible. Audible is the world's largest provider of audio entertainment. I myself have over 100 books that I have downloaded from Audible on my phone right now. And if not for Audible, I would not be able to keep up with all of the books and all of the podcasts that I want to hear because life is really, really busy. But with Audible, you can take all of your titles with you on the go. They sync across devices. And I love when you can listen to the author read their own book. So Arlen Hamilton, who was a guest on this podcast a few months ago, she wrote a book called It's About Damn Time. And I loved listening to the audio version of that book and listening to Arlen's voice tell me her story. So I'm a big, big fan and a long time subscriber of Audible. And as a listener of this podcast, you can get a free 30-day trial of Audible by visiting audibletrial.com/dearfranny. Audible Trial, audibletrial.com/dearfranny. When you use your trial, you can cancel at any time, no strings attached. And the title that you get, and you get 2 titles if you are an Amazon Prime member, whatever titles you get to keep them. You download them and you get to keep them forever, even if you wind up canceling your membership. But I don't think you will because it's that good. So visit audibletrial.com/dearfranny. Hello and welcome to Dear Franny, the podcast of uncommon conversations about love. I'm your host, Francesca HERE. Hi, thank you so much for tuning in. I really, really, really appreciate you because your time is precious and I don't take it for granted that you're spending a little bit of it with me today, so thank you so much. And today's episode is such a good one, and I'm so excited about my guest today. Her name is Aycee Brown, and she is a new friend of mine, but I already just love her so much, and I know that you will too. Aycee is a psychic channel, a spiritual leader, entrepreneur, and your favorite human design bae. The work she does in the world is about transformation. She offers people a deeper look into themselves, helping them to reframe who they are and clarify where and why they belong. She does this through spiritual self-development, human design, astrology, and metaphysics. She's also the host of the Is My Aura on Straight podcast, which is such a great podcast, and I've already binge listened to so many episodes of it. And for those of you who aren't familiar with human design is a system, it is a tool that is based on your date, time, and place of birth. I have an episode from a year ago, November of 2019, about human design, an interview that I did with a human design reader named Erin Claire Jones. And I promise you, I'm actually going to record, my next episode is going to be about human design, where I'm going to explain a little bit more and break it down, because it does take some explanation. But I want to mention that, first of all, so you know what human design is, but also it comes up a little bit in the interview, just in that Aycee and I have the same aura type in human design. Everyone is one of 5 different aura types, and Aycee and I are both what's called a projector. So that just comes up a little bit, just so you know what we're talking about. And like I said, stay tuned, because the next episode after this one is going to be about human design. Okay. Enough of that. And without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with my friend, Aycee Brown. Aycee Brown, welcome to Dear Franny.
Thank you for having me, Franny. I love you.
I love you. I'm just so thrilled that we found each other, or I found you. And and it's only been a few weeks now.
Yeah, but it feels like a lifetime.
It feels like so long, and it feels really, really special. So I'm just so happy to know you, and thank you so much for being here. I'm excited for my audience to also get to know you. So we know what you do, and I want to talk all about that, but okay. Tell me a little bit about you. How did you come to this path? What is, you do so many things, you wear so many hats, you're this amazing entrepreneur, and obviously this intuitive guide and human design bae. And how did that happen? What is the history of Aycee Brown?
Oh, where do I start though? I see, and this is we might as well call this struggle bus emotions title for the episode, because a mentor of mine, we talk about this all the time as I'm stepping more into me as a psychic channel, as a spiritual guide, teacher, leader, guru, whatever, all of that stuff. how I need to tell my story. And she's always like, you need to tell your story. I'm just like, where should I start? Like, what do I say?
Yeah.
Because it's so many layers sometimes that you just not necessarily want to forget about it, but you heal from it. You go to therapy about it. You do all of these things. And it's just like, oh my gosh, why can't I just send everybody a PDF? Like, hey, this is what happened. Right. Like literally, like just put my link in my bio. I'm like PDF on Aycee's story. So it's like, there you go. And then we don't have to talk about it anymore.
You know what this means, Aycee? It means that you are destined to write a book about your life.
Okay. One day.
So one day, I know, listen, you're young, you got lots of, not that you, I mean, listen, you can certainly write a book today if you wanted to, but that sounds like that's something that needs to happen. So how about, do you want me to ask you a series of questions?
That would be better.
Because that was very open-ended. I apologize. That was a terrible interview question. So just tell me everything.
Right. Just tell me everything. Like, where should I start?
I know. When people ask me questions like that, I'm like, wow, there is so much. Okay, so you're from New York. You're from Queens.
Yes, I'm from Queens. Queens in the house.
Just found that out. Very excited. I'm from the Bronx in Manhattan. So
okay,
we are both New York City girls. So now you live in the DMV area. So
yes.
Growing up in New York, how did you like growing up in New York City?
I loved it.
Me too.
I tell people all the time who don't get it, because you grew up in, New York City or you didn't. There's something about growing up in New York City in one of the 5 boroughs, except Staten Island. I don't know anything. One of my best friends is from Staten Island, and it's so funny. We crack up about it, like, except Staten Island. No, but if you grow up in a borough and you're growing up in the city, you have this underlying kind of self-assurance about who you are based off of where you're from. And so, like you said, I grew up in the Bronx. I grew up in Manhattan. Like, I grew up in Queens. Like, that means something.
It does mean something. It's so true. Yeah.
Where you come from in that. And so growing up for me, it was very prideful, especially in the St. Albans neighborhood that I grew up in Queens, where the era that I grew up in the 90s, 80s, was from a generation of people who came to that town, and we had very prominent, like, African American, like, a community there. There were doctors, lawyers, superintendents, principals, you had, mechanics, but everybody, had owned a home. We had a block association. There were just so many things that just made me who I am, that I cherish so much. That I remember doing a podcast episode and somewhere else, and they were saying, like, oh, you always refer to how you were raised and you're so attached to it. And I'm just like, no, you don't understand. That's a big deal, for growing up in an African American neighborhood where everyone is middle to upper middle class and there's a community there. I remember growing up and my mom taking me around the corner to one of my grandmother's and grandfather's friends who was a doctor, and everybody would go to him when you were sick. You know what I mean? He had a practice in his home. So these are things that were just really important, and that kind of formed who I was. So being from New York is, everybody has one of those stories. So it's home on a different level, because that whole, if you could make it here, you could make it anywhere. And it's very true. We are built very different.
Yeah.
As New Yorkers. So I hope that answers your question.
No, it totally does. No, I mean, I had a very different, it sounds like, you lived in a lovely neighborhood that had a lot of resources. I did not. I grew up in the South Bronx, so I had a very different experience in terms of what the neighborhood was like. But that sense of real, like, it does matter. Like, it absolutely influences who you are, where you grow up, and what you're exposed to. And yeah, New Yorkers, we definitely have I mean, there are lots of other places where people have this too. Though I know some people are kind of like, yeah, I'm just from wherever, but they don't have an attachment to it.
Right. But
there are certain places, where you.
Yeah. Even with, different socioeconomic kind of backgrounds, your identity is still, it's rooted in who you've become.
Yeah.
because you're from the South Bronx.
Yep, absolutely.
Even with, everybody has their, ups and downs, even growing up in, the suburbs, there still were all of the things that I can relate to with you being in the South Bronx.
Mm-hmm.
It's interchangeable in my eyes.
Yeah.
And some people's is not.
No, and I can relate to your experience too. Also, like I get it. I totally get that. Because that's the thing about New York. You just have exposure to everyone. So you can kind of relate to everyone because you've seen it all, That's kind of how I feel.
Yes.
So when you were growing up in Queens, what did you want to be when you grew up, when you were a kid?
Well, several careers, but one of the first ones that I wanted to be was probably on stage somewhere. I did not know doing what. I never forget in elementary school, they did a play, they did The Wiz. And I remember somebody, like one of the upperclassmen, she was maybe like in 3rd grade or 4th grade, but I remember her playing Dorothy's role that Diana Ross played. And I remember sitting in the audience and just like, I want to be up on stage. And that's all I remember. I never had a connection to what I was going to do on stage or how I was going to get on stage. For a while, I thought I was acting. I spent 2.5 years in acting school. Love acting. I was a Girl Scout for a very long time in my life. So
I was a Girl Scout too, but only briefly.
Yes. And one of the moms, she was a Spanish woman and she was psychic. And she would always tell my mom, she's going to make millions of dollars with her voice. She would just prophesize over my voice, all the time. And my mom would be like, well, she wants to sing because I wanted to be a songwriter. And she was like, no, she can't sing. Duh, I can't sing. And it was just something that I just knew I wanted to be on stage and I wanted to be seen. And maybe that had a lot to do with not being seen. So it was rooted in that, but there was no particular one thing because I was always willing to risk something or take a risk to figure out what I wanted to do. It was never set in stone.
Yeah. Did you have siblings growing up?
No, I'm an only child.
You're an only child. Okay, yeah, it's interesting because first of all, I'm obsessed with these moments, this inner knowing that we have as children about certain things. I'm obsessed with that. I'm just obsessed with how that truth can just come through. And even though you're like, I don't know why I think this, I don't know where this is coming from, it's just this inner knowing. And I'm just,
right.
I love hearing about those moments. I love that story. You knew you wanted to be on stage. You didn't know. You went the acting route. You wanted to be a songwriter. And then what happened?
Then I went to college and, well, funny thing, I wanted to move to LA out of high school. And because I was like, I'm going to just go out and do stuff in LA and be an actor and maybe do producing or whatever. And my parents were like, no, you need to go to business school. You need to go get a real degree. You need to get something solid. Business is good. So I wound up just staying home, if you want to say. I went to school in New Jersey. And so I was just like, okay, I will just do business. And I never forget, I was like, okay, when I got to school, I was like, you know what? I want to be a publicist. I'd be good at it. I started a little public relations kind of thing with me and a friend. It didn't do anything. We did PR for 2 parties at a club. It was a mess. But I remember saying, okay, I'm going to take this super seriously. I'm going to go and get an internship. And at the time, one of the biggest Black publicists was hiring for interns. And I was like, I'm going to apply. And I applied and I got the interview. It was group interview. I never forget it. They were telling me it's going to be a group interview. And I'm like, awesome. And my interview was on 9/11. Oh. And I remember getting up early, getting dressed. And then I was staying on my cousin's floor actually, because long story short, the year before I had to, due to financial reasons, I couldn't stay on campus. So I was still at school. So I was sleeping on her floor, ironing my pants, ironing my shirt, getting ready to go to this dream interview.
Where was it?
Physically
in a city.
Where was it at? Well, I don't remember what street her offices were on.
Did you make it there?
So my cousin comes in the room. She was like, oh my God, the Twin Towers just got hit. I was like, stop playing. Like, because growing up in New York, you know, I've been alive where something happened at the Twin Towers before.
Yeah, we had the bombing. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We are that's the very interesting thing too about growing up in New York. You become very immune to certain tragedies that you don't really, doesn't click until after.
Yeah.
Because it's happened before and it's New York. It's an epicenter, all of this stuff. So she's like, no, for real. I was like, girl, stop. And so I'm getting dressed and she's like, no, my dad just called me. And her dad worked in one of the towers, but he was late because he was going to jury duty. He had to go to jury duty.
Oh, God. Wow.
And so he missed it by going to jury duty. And then I was just like, OMG, are you for real? And she was like, yes. And then we turned on the TV. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I called the office for the publicist and I said, I have an interview today, but I know it's canceled, etc. And she's like, yeah, it's going to be canceled. And she's like, we'll give you guys a call later on. And then, of course, they never called back because...
Yeah, I know. Everything was...
the whole world changed from there.
Yes, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And after that, it literally, like that year, from September all the way into the next year was probably one of the worst years of my life.
Wow.
With all of the things that had happened, like that trickled. And so that's where, and then I was just like, okay, I won't be a publicist. And then that spun off to me leaving school shortly thereafter, after that year, and then the next phase of my life.
Yeah. So when did you realize that you were an intuitive? When did you realize that you had psychic gifts?
That was always something that was known since I was a kid. So since I was around 3, 4, probably the earliest that I can remember was like kindergarten, maybe even before that I can remember. So my grandmother always knew there was inclinations because I had a lot of imaginary friends, but some of my imaginary friends would be like dead people. So, family members and things like that. And my grandmother knew, and I remember my grandmother, she used to play the numbers, and we used to always go to these like underground like spots where she would play like illegal numbers and I would pick numbers for her and she would win all the time. And at the time, my gift was mostly, clairvoyance through dreaming. And so I would always have these very vivid dreams. And I never forget, it was almost like, I don't want to say a daily, but anytime I had a really major dream, she would be sitting at the kitchen table. She would have her notebook and she would start writing down symbols and different things. And she would ask me questions.
Oh, wow.
So that was a ongoing thing with us. Me and my grandmother were very close. So that was an ongoing thing. So that my gifts were developed before I knew I was developing them, if you want to say that.
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible. Oh my gosh. I could just talk to you about that for a really long time, but okay, let me stay on track. Okay. So 9/11 happened. And I, by the way, just really quick, I also was in New York on 9/11 and it was my second day of work I used to be a lawyer in my previous life. And this was my second day of work at my law firm, like my big corporate law job.
Wow.
Fresh out of law school. And I was home and I had the Today Show on like while I was getting dressed and I saw that a plane had hit the first tower. And I was just like, oh, that's too bad. And I just left and got on the subway and went downtown.
Right. Because we were just like, okay, girl, like exactly.
And I got downtown and it's just like, I get off at 42nd Street. I mean, I didn't have to go all the way downtown. I just was going to Midtown. I got off at 42nd Street and like all hell had broken loose at that point. And I was like, what's going on? I didn't even remember. I was like, it wasn't like I was like, oh, I wonder if it has something to do with that plane that hit the World Trade Center. Because at that time, when it first hit, they thought it was like a small plane, like a little,
right,
like a little private plane. So I was like, oh, I'm sure somebody I was like, that's terrible, but I can just relate to that. Just taking a little time for that to sink in because it was just the enormity of what happened. And then what happened? Like what started to turn the tide?
Nothing really. The tide didn't turn for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you a very short timeline. So summer before 9/11, me and my college sweetheart broke up. 9/11 happened. My grandmother got sick around November. She died by February.
Oh.
My dad had a tragedy happen. So that tragedy spun off that prior year in that summer. So in the summertime, the tragedy happened, broke up with my boyfriend. 9/11, grandmother got sick, grandmother died, left school, and then started like working.
Yeah, wow. Oh God. My heart goes out to you because that's rough. That's a lot. What kind of work were you doing at that point? You had these gifts, but were you still kind of just taking it for granted as just a gift that you had, but it didn't mean anything? Or what was your relationship at that point with your gifts?
They were always there, of course. It was just more of, I wasn't necessarily using them in a professional way. It was just more like, I call it unsolicited reading people, just, really unethical, really wrong, just in my, mid-20s, just like, oh, I know about you, and shocking people, and this like kind of unethical awe, if you want to say.
Yeah.
And I was just working as a manager in retail, in several different retail, and then getting into sales corporately. And then finally I got a job where they paid for school. So I was able to go back to school and finish and then get my master's. And I think that's probably where the tides kind of turned for me. I would even say psychically, and also in a life coaching kind of way, or guidance kind of way for other people, or consulting and things like that. Because people, since I was in high school, people always come to me. I just was one of those people always coming to me with their problems, with ideas, helping them flesh out stuff. And I would give them things and it would work. They would make money. Things would change. All of this stuff that had always been it. And then when I started working in this corporate position, in particular doing sales, and I got a chance to go back to school because they paid for it, and got to do a lot of schooling at that. Everybody used to always laugh at me like, you always taking classes. I'm like, because it's free. Why wouldn't I?
Yes, seriously. Why wouldn't you? That's amazing. You did that right. Let me tell you.
I remember like getting off of work, but like, all right, I gotta go, because I was working in Jersey. I was like, I gotta go. I gotta get on a train because I gotta be at NYU. I was taking classes everywhere. Anyway, they paid for, I was taking classes in addition to finishing my undergrad and then going on to grad school. I remember just talking to people, and we'd be at our cubicles and people would just be talking. I'm like, well, maybe this and this, and they're like, girl, are you psychic? How did you know that? And I would just like keep it to myself, like, yeah, sure. And so I remember one girl was like, hey, I'm sure you are psychic. I need a favor, kind of thing. And so I gave her a reading, and I had done that already. This is not something very new, but it was the first time where somebody like came to me and asked me for one. She was just like, thank you. And, she came back. She was like, everything happened. She's like, thank you. So I was like, awesome. Thank you. And I think that was really when I started figuring like, oh, I could like help people instead of being like a mean, like know-it-all kind of thing.
Yes. Wow. Okay. So you started realizing, okay, there's something here. So how long was it then before this became your business?
Well, that was a long road because I was so afraid to call myself psychic. I hid under that intuitive umbrella for years, honey. I'm like, oh, I'm an intuitive strategist. I'm an intuitive life coach. And
wait, so what's the difference in your mind between being an intuitive and being a psychic?
The only difference in my mind is that one gets shunned and the other one gets kind of handheld and praised. That's the only difference. We could do a whole podcast on other things. I don't want to go there. Your audience is going to be like, what is this? That was a big thing. Like, oh, I'm intuitive. Like, I'm an intuitive. And it's just like, no, you're psychic. Let it go. Like, but that took me a long time. So I was just like, okay, how can I mask this in a way, if you want to say? So then I went and got my life coaching certification. And so I was like, oh, I can just mask it behind life coaching. There you go. And that made it like better. it wasn't until like maybe 2-3 years ago that I actually said psychic. I was hiding behind intuitive for a very long time.
Wow. Do you have a 1 in your profile?
No, I'm a 3-5.
Oh, you're a 3-5. Oh, that makes sense too, actually.
It does. It does.
Sorry, everyone. That was a human design reference for those of you who don't know what we're talking about. We're not going to get into it. So listen to Aycee's podcast. It's my aura on straight for more information on what that means. So, okay. So here you are finally doing what you were clearly meant to do. You're so good at it and you're successful at it. And so now, like, what's the dream? Like, if I had a magic wand and I could just give you any career impact platform you wanted, what would that look like?
Oh my gosh.
You have your stage right now. You're on your stage, but that stage has got to get bigger.
Franny. My goal is to be the psychic channel, spiritual guru for a new generation, for new thought leaders, for the new paradigm. What Abraham Hicks is to people, I want to be essentially the Black version of that. What a little bit of Iyanla Vanzant did for our mothers and our aunts, I want to be that for people in our age bracket and to follow. That's 1000% honest.
Wow. I'm so glad you just claimed that. I love it. I see it. And I am so excited for you because that's definitely going to happen.
Oh.
And and not only are you going to write a book about your life personally, I can also see you writing many other books as well.
Yeah, I'm working on one. So yeah.
Good. Excellent.
Yeah, it's going to be a guided journal, but it's going to be a hard hitting. I know what I'm called to do. I'm here I believe that everyone's soul has come here to do a job, and I'm here to help people complete their mission.
Oh, I love that. Yes. Yes, Aycee. Yes. That is incredible. That's incredible. So let's talk about love.
Let's
talk about love.
Let's segue into that, because then I have questions for you. This might be me interviewing you, because I'm like, listen, with all of that I want to do and all of that you see, how does the love fit in? Because there's my now we can have a conversation. Now, people break out the tissues.
Yes. Okay. So number one, I take it. I mean, I know, for most people, for most psychics, you're not really psychic for yourself. Is that true? Or do you feel?
I'm going to say that's a lie. This is what I will say, is that in my experience from other friends who are psychic or, whatever their gifts are, we've had conversations. Sometimes you don't need to know everything, and I don't seek to know everything. The funny thing is that anytime I usually have a reading from someone who I respect, trust, with my energy to see into me, I never asked about love. Never.
Really?
Shockingly. Probably up until recently. I never asked about love because I was very like, what's my career going to be like? What's this money situation going to be like? That's what I was concerned with, because I have felt that love was something that I know is one of my ultimate lessons to learn with my journey and where I'm at now. And I took your quiz. I'm a sailor, so I guess that's good, right?
Yeah. Does that resonate with you?
I was shocked. I was like, I thought it was going to be way lower, to be honest with you. I was like, oh, look at me, all scoring high.
It also depends on the optimism with which you answer the questions.
I'm in an optimistic place right now.
It's amazing.
So, which is great. And so it's not that I can't see, I ignore stuff. I think all people who are psychic or who have any spiritual gift, you ignore it because you're like, well, maybe not. But it's just like, no, girl,
Yeah. It sounds to me, and I'm going to put myself firmly under the intuitive umbrella, and I'm comfortable there because I don't consider myself to be psychic, though I've had moments of,
What I'm hearing is that you are extremely clairvoyant and clairsentient.
Yes.
Okay, so
yes. Yeah, I was going to say I definitely, yes, I do, yes, but I'm comfortable with that in the intuitive umbrella. Like
okay.
That feels right to
we'll
me.
let you stay there.
So I'm just going to say, and in my umbrella here, okay, you have a choice to make, and your choice is I want love and I'm going to manifest this, or I'm going to kind of keep letting it be on the back burner and not really focus on it.
Oh, who you think you're talking to, Franny?
And I will just tell you that if you make that choice to say, this is something that I want, and you own that and you claim it, then you absolutely will manifest it. But it is unlikely that it will happen unless you make that shift.
I'm so rolling my eyes right now because I was so here's my thing, and we can this is where we can start this love conversation, because I have been made aware from my guides, from other people who have tapped in, saw into me, just like you, like, oh, I can totally see that and all of this stuff, because I know the bigness of my destiny and my calling and my purpose. My issue with love is that I am, and I'm willing to say this, and this is going to be weird, but I'm going to say it. I am afraid for someone to see all of that because I don't know if they're going to like it or not.
Yeah. Well, that's fear. And fundamentally, that's the same fear that we all have.
Right.
Right? If anyone sees who I really am, will they love me? And that is why, that fear is very natural. And, the challenge with being vulnerable is a very universal challenge for that reason. And the answer is everyone going to love you?
No.
When they see who you are? No.
But I don't care about that.
And that's just the case for everyone. So just know, like, it's okay to feel that fear, but when it comes to fear and my relationship with it, and certainly what I, teach my clients, is like, fear is just part of being human. So it's totally fine to be afraid. And it's really helpful to understand what it is you're afraid of, because then it's not surprising.
Right.
Because then you're like, all right, well, I know that this is something that is scary for me right now. So now I can make a plan to address that rather than just be reactive when the fear is activated, because then you don't move forward. I think that for you, one thing that I would just urge you to start doing right now is just to challenge yourself to consider possibility that you can have it all. And when I say have it all, I mean the things that your heart is most calling for you to have, which is impact, abundance, and love.
I can have it all. I do believe that. However, I have to get 1000% comfortable and stand firm in who I am. And I'm about 95% there.
Okay.
So that's the honest truth.
Yeah. But I really feel that as soon as you're ready, like you're really ready, and you just like,
yeah, I'm really ready.
You flip that switch and you're like, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to call in this partner. I'm ready to claim this desire for partnership. It'll happen really quickly.
That's the funny thing, is I feel that too. And I was just like, oh, I'll just hire Franny when I'm ready to do that. Just work with you. I was like looking at your package. I was like, oh, it looks good. When I'm ready for that, that's when I'll press that button and apply. Whoop. like that's literally what I was doing last night. Like, I'll just do that.
Aww.
I don't have to worry about it right now. Like, I don't have to worry about it right now.
So, yeah, I mean, I do find it interesting, though, this last 5%. What do you think that's about?
It is about it's the seeing me. Like, okay, so we're going to have to go into a little bit of human design. As a projector, the being seen is crucial, right?
Absolutely.
The invitations are crucial. Mm-hmm. So when you start getting them in other places, right? Career, whatever it is. And then when this thing called love, and where I'm at right now, the optimism is there. And because I'm so used to not being completely seen on so many levels, you know, being the only child in a family where everyone has a brother or sister except for me, being the browner one in my family. Everyone is very fair skinned. So that's another layer there of not being seen per se. And just these things of not being seen, and then also fighting against this, like, oh, I'm doing my best. I'm trying, like, what's going on? And, you know, of course, and then you find out you're a projector and it's like, oh, this is why it's not working. You know, this is why. This is why it's not working.
It's the best thing ever, Franny.
Right.
I was a projector. I was like,
so,
I understand my whole life
like,
now.
oh, this is why it's not working. And so you spend your life trying to be seen. Then when you come to this awareness that, oh, okay, it's about the invitation or people seeing me, etc. When it comes to love and having the ultimate love, that soulmate, life partner, the thing that you dream about, that especially at this point now where I know who I am and I know what I want, it's almost like, wow, that's the ultimate invitation and the ultimate being seen. And that means that you will see all of me. And that part is kind of very vulnerable. It's very naked. And can someone handle that, but can I handle someone handling that?
Yeah. Yep. So it sounds to me like it's not that it's part of yourself. You already know. You already know yourself. You already know who you are. I think, do you struggle with perfectionism at all?
Define that. What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
Like, do you feel that there is this optimal state that you have to be in order to move forward?
Look at you all being intuitive. Look at you. Look at you all being intuitive. Absolutely.
So I would just, listen, my favorite quote about perfection is a Tony Robbins quote. And he said, perfection is the lowest standard a person can hold for themselves because it's the only one that's impossible to achieve.
Okay, well, that's cute. It's cute. Tony Robbins. That's cute. But it's not perfectionism. It's, I say goals.
So no, and that's goals. Great. No, I guess I say this to say I don't mean to give you a hard time, Aycee. I guess I'm just saying to say,
give me a hard time.
This is something that I don't know if it's even that I'm so intuitive. It's just that it's just so common, I think especially for women, especially for Black women, I think we just have this idea that I got to have it all figured out. And then when I have it all figured out, then I can go do X. Once I've got all the answers, then I can, you see this a lot with jobs, like in HR and careers. Women on the whole, if a job has 20 requirements that, that's in the job listing, women will not apply unless they have all 20. Whereas men will be like, oh, I've got 4. I can figure out the rest, and they'll apply for the job.
4. They'll be like, I have 1. I know how to open up Excel. I should be the president of the company.
Well, exactly. All right, I don't have any of these, but I can do this, and they apply for the job, right?
I could be the president here. Jeez.
So, and this is a well-documented phenomenon, So there's just a little bit of that. You're right. It isn't exactly perfectionism. It's more of just, it's not that you think that you can be perfect, but you just think that there's a threshold of information and confidence that I have in this area, and then I can move forward.
Yes. And also too, I have in the past, but I've through therapy and healing and other things, I know that I'm not going to be available anymore to be a conduit for other people's healing. Mm-hmm. In a relationship. That's number 1. Mm-hmm. Number 2, in the past, because of boundaries and other things and who I am, what I do, where I'm going, I had positioned myself in the past to be in relationships with people who essentially, instead of me being someone's girlfriend, I was, his life coach. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. And so the boundaries there that I have set for myself are very tight around that. Not to the point where it's not flexible, but I'm also I don't want to fall back into these patterns, or I, don't want to not even fall back into patterns, but is there someone out there who won't need me to, motivate them? I want to be, or how can I put this? I've realized this in therapy, that I want to be an addition to what he is doing and not the catalyst.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. Yeah, I see you with somebody who really has this shit together.
Yeah. And so, okay. So there you go, intuitive. So with that.
Yeah, he has this shit together, and he himself is probably he's not on a spiritual journey like you are, but he has been on a personal development journey.
Okay.
So like he has self-awareness.
Right.
He has
Check.
emotional intelligence.
Check.
You can create that emotional safety and that emotional intimacy with him because he has the ability to really risk pain and to be vulnerable.
Check.
So that's your guy. It's not somebody but I also don't see him as being somebody who's like he's not a psychic. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, no.
Like that's not his world.
Look at you being all intuitive, because definitely I want someone who's spiritual, but you do not need to be on my path. We do not need to be out there reading other people. No.
Yeah.
It's totally separate. Look at you all intuitive. Yeah, okay now. All right, Franny.
Yeah, he's going to obviously, his love and his respect for you and your gifts is going to be unconditional, but this is not his jam.
Yeah, there you go. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's probably.
Absolutely. Look at that.
Well, so I imagine though that, when people come to you, I mean, love must be, if not the number one thing, is it the number one thing that people come to you about, or where does it rank in what people are seeking, the guidance people are seeking?
It's the second thing for me.
Okay. What's number one? Money?
Business, career.
Business. Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to even lie or not to even pat myself. I'm really good at, when it comes to me and my guides, business, marketing, innovation, seeing things, putting things together. Before I was I made a lot of people a lot of money. That's all I can say. Before I started charging for this years ago, I used to make people so much money. It was ridiculous. Just with ideas and just predictions and things like that. And I'd just be like, it worked. I'm like, oh, and I didn't get anything for it. That's what actually started making me charge, to be honest with you. So money, career, business is probably the number one. And then second is love. But surprisingly, love more. It depends what type of love. It's not always, is this person for me kind of thing. Sometimes it's, how do we make this work?
Mm-hmm. I would also imagine that you get a lot of, am I ever going to have love? Like, is love my destiny? Or is...
I usually don't answer those questions, shockingly.
Yeah. Do you get answers, but you just don't share them? Or you just...
So one time I had someone, so this is the thing. I'm very particular about the information that I receive. And there's two sides of the coin on ethics. I have psychic friends who have religious backgrounds, who are very, or if you want to say in the religious community, who are prophets, and who I'm friends with. And they're just like, you don't have to give everything. Then I have other friends who are ex-religious people who are in the community and who are like, no, you are the vessel. That's none of your business. You give the information. So it's always a coin toss. It really depends on the person and the energy and what my guides, what I'm channeling, I let them kind of decipher. Because I've had instances where I've had people come to me and who are very aggressively upset at their life and what's going on. Where's their boyfriend? Where's their husband? Where are these things? And the information that I give them is never going to be enough.
Never. Yeah.
So it's like, well, I can't tell you what I'm really hearing or picking up, because it's still not going to be enough for you.
Mm-hmm.
Because you want a date, you want a time, you want specifics. And to me, that's the wrong approach. I always tell my clients who come to me strictly for psychic channels information, for spiritual guidance, sometimes, and I had to learn this, from elders and from, mentors of mine, and even, in the religious community, prophets who I've studied under and things like that, who time frames for me, I'm just not one of those people.
Yeah.
There are others that I know, they are on it. Time is really strong with them. Time for me has never been a strong suit, but I'm usually around a year. I like to say that I'm usually around a year. That's usually my kind of time frame.
Yeah.
So when it comes to love, I would say it's a coin toss about what the person already knows, what they're coming with information, because sometimes people are just coming for confirmation. Others are wanting answers, real definite, concrete, and sometimes
right, they're like demanding an answer,
it's just
certainty,
right.
But I also think for those people, when you're in that place of demanding that answer, there is no answer.
Exactly.
Where you are right now, there is no date
because of where you are right now,
because of your mindset. Like, you're never actually going to get, like, this mindset does not support that, so there's way more potential for you. But as long as you stay in this like demanding the certainty mindset, like there is no answer.
Right.
Because you're just going to stay right there.
Right. I absolutely agree.
Yeah. So interesting. So I think, even though, you're focused a lot on business and money, both personally and in your business, I'm just really leaning into my intuition here today.
Okay, go on.
But I really feel that I think that really what your real zone of genius is like, well, you're in it, but also that is even expanding, is going to be love and money.
Yeah.
Period. Like, love and money. Like, that is going to be I feel like that's where you're going to make your most impact.
Okay. Well, look at the confirmation. Maybe this podcast recording was really for me, not because I've been like, listen, guys, I'm not sure what's going on, but where do you,
Yeah.
And no, that's a confirmation. I believe within that, love and money is also about the soul's journey.
Yes, exactly.
And the soul's position with love and money.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
So I will 1,000% get behind that.
Yeah. Because I think you're really good at business. Obviously, you're an amazing entrepreneur and you have a head for business and marketing, and you could do that. I'm sure you could do that in your sleep, and that has been great because that's been enabling you to, like, it's funding you, right? Like, it's funding the vision, it's funding the journey, it's allowed you to create a platform. But yeah, I just feel that what's going to really skyrocket you is not business, but money and love.
I can totally get behind that. Just as far as, the self, the soul, healing, and abundance.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Look at you all. Look at you, Franny.
It's you, Aycee. It's you. You're just inspiring me.
Well, listen, if that is what I'm doing, then I'm here for it.
Oh my gosh, yes.
That's what I'm here to do.
Yes.
So, absolutely.
Yes. If you had, I always ask my guests this question. If you had a megaphone that was loud enough for the whole world to hear, and soon you will, and you could send out one message about love, what would that message be?
Oh, wow. I would probably send the message that love is everything that you want to bring to it and even more. But you have to be open to receiving it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that was beautiful and perfect. So thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, I know perfection isn't real, doesn't exist, but that was pretty perfect.
Right. Perfection's not real. That's what Tony Robbins says. I'm going to be quoting that. Perfection's not real, guys, because Tony Robbins says that.
It's such a good quote though, right? It's such a good quote.
It's a very good quote. That really was like, oh, gosh.
The lowest standard. It's like, it's a good reframe for people who really think of like, oh, I'm holding myself to like the highest standard. It's like, no, it's the lowest.
It's the lowest standard. Oh, That hurt. That one hurt.
I know. It hit me too when I first heard it. I was like, oh, damn. Stop talking to me, Tony Robbins.
That hurt. That did hurt. Gosh.
Aycee Brown, I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your gifts with the world and with me and with my audience.
No, thank you for having me. We probably could have talked for 2 hours, but
we easily could. Before we say goodbye, is there anything in particular that you want to just tell my audience about, that you're working on, ways to stay in touch? I mean, I'm going to link to your social media and your podcast and your website and everything, but just please share what you're working on and how people can stay in touch with you.
So many things are coming. Just so many things. I can't even wait to veil and just unravel all of the little things per quarter next year. But just, follow me on Instagram, my YouTube, podcasts, get on my mailing list. It's going to be a really great 2021. I feel it. I'm ready. It's time kind of thing. So
yes.
Yeah.
So excited. Well, there'll be links in the show notes to everything. I appreciate you so much, Aycee Brown. I'm excited for your 2021, and I'm so happy that you're my friend now.
Yes, we friends, because Franny gonna find me a husband, y'all. So just put that out there in the streets, men out there, preferably 6 feet or taller, caramel complected. I'm not particular, but hit up Franny. She's my matchmaker now.
I'm taking notes. Thank you, Aycee.
Thank you.
And there you have it, my conversation with Aycee. Please check the show notes. Check out Aycee. Aycee is spelled Aycee Brown. So check out her website. I'm going to link to all of her social media and everything in the show notes. And I really, really do want you to check her out, especially if you're intrigued by human design, because she is so wise and she has so much knowledge about human design, and she will teach you a lot just by listening to her podcast and following her on Instagram. So speaking of Instagram, I would really love to stay in touch with you. And for all of you who have already followed the podcast at Dear Franny Podcast on Instagram and Facebook, and I'm at Dear Franny on Instagram and Twitter and all the places. And I so appreciate those of you who've reached out to say that you're enjoying the show and tell me that you're sharing the show and tagging us on social media. I so appreciate you. Those of you who've taken the time to subscribe, to rate the podcast, to review the podcast, I see you. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. And if you are enjoying the podcast and you haven't yet done any of those things, I invite you to please subscribe, share it with your friends, rate it, review it, and just reach out and let me know how you like it and what kind of episodes you want to hear coming up in the future. And, the world is a crazy place right now, and the more opportunities that we can find joy and to learn about ourselves and to grow and to love ourselves more, I just think that those moments are more important than ever. So in this crazy time, this challenging time of life, just know that I appreciate you. I'm grateful for you. I'm sending you love wherever you are in the world. And I thank you so much for spending some time with me today. Take good care of yourself. Stay safe. Wear a mask. And I will talk to you next time. Goodbye.